New this morning, growing efforts to help veterans in our area. It is part of the Cape Fear Veterans Resilience Project, connecting men and women with dozens of resources all across the region. WECT's Mara McJilton has been following this story for years. Mara, you spoke to the president of the organization about how they're really looking forward to grow now over the next year.
Yeah, I spoke to Jim Blair, and he says that they've helped dozens of veterans just in their first year of the Cape Fear Veterans Resilience Project. But he says that he wants to move faster and help even more people because he knows that time can make a difference. Now, Blair says that he knows they have more work to do. Leaders with the VRP, they're now working with UNCW's psychology department to help understand the local veteran suicide rate and parts of that equation where the organization can come into play and prevent those tragedies. Now, they're also forming the Community Veteran Engagement Board so that veterans can help others understand where they need help the most, like in education or employment, finances, camaraderie, or mental health. Blair says he knows that building up community support and getting the word out to others will help them form those public-private partnerships to fund different resources and events for those veterans.
We need to get the community together. That's what really seems to be the solution, finding the veterans that need help and matching them to what the community can offer. And thankfully here in Cape Fear there's a lot of resources out here, and we just have to marshal and prioritize them.
Now, Blair also mentioned that they have some guys working on applied suicide intervention training along with hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and it all seems to be making a difference one day at a time. Now, if you want to get connected with the Veteran Resilience Project, I'll have a link inside this story on our website. Mara McJilton, WECT News.